A queen hears that her son, the king, is dead. Instead of mourning, she calls for soldiers. Swords are drawn. Orders are shouted, and one by one, the princes of Judah, little boys, teenage heirs, grown royal sons, are hunted down and slaughtered inside the palace complex. Blood on the stones, empty nurseries, the royal line of David, the line God had promised would one day produce the Messiah, is almost completely wiped out in a single, calculated purge. And at the center of it all stands one woman, the only queen to ever rule Judah, who took the throne by murdering her own family. Welcome to Forgotten Scriptures, where we uncover the Bible's most shocking, violent, and controversial stories. Today, we're entering the dark world of Ahaziah, the ruthless queen who hijacked the throne of Judah, tried to exterminate the house of David, and turned the temple of the Lord into a base of operations for Baal worship. This is a story of political assassination, hidden royal babies, a 7-year-long conspiracy inside the temple, and a coup so dramatic that the queen died screaming treason as swords closed in around her. If you're ready for a biblical story that feels like a mix of Game of Thrones and a political thriller, hit that subscribe button. You're in Forgotten Scriptures. To understand Athaliah, we have to understand the world she came from. This isn't just Judah's story. It's the fallout of 2 corrupt dynasties colliding. We're in the 9th century BCE. The kingdom has long been split. Israel in the north, with Samaria as its capital, and Judah in the south, ruled from Jerusalem. In the north, we have the infamous King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, a royal power couple devoted to Baal, drenched in bloodshed and idolatry. In the south, Judah still sits on David's throne. The temple of Yahweh stands in Jerusalem. Sacrifices continue. Priests still serve. But the rot from the north is about to infect the south. Athaliah is Jezebel's daughter, or, at the very least, of her bloodline in her world. That means she was raised in a palace saturated with Baal worship, political assassinations, and ruthless power plays. In Ahab's house, prophets were executed. Vineyards were seized through false trials, and royal murders were just another Tuesday. This is the environment that shaped Athaliah. She didn't just marry into Judah. She carried the spiritual and political poison of the northern kingdom straight into David's line. Judah's King Joram, son of the righteous Jehoshaphat, married Athaliah to secure a political alliance with Israel. It looked smart, geopolitically. 2 kingdoms united by marriage, stronger against enemies. But spiritually, it was disastrous. Joram walked in the way of the kings of Israel, following Ahab's line, not David's. He killed his own brothers to secure the throne. He built high places and led Judah into idolatry. The infection had begun. Their son Ahaziah took the throne next. He was young, influenced heavily by his mother. Scripture says his mother was his counselor in doing wickedly. Imagine that. Your primary spiritual advisor is Jezebel's daughter. Ahaziah followed the ways of Ahab's family, not David's. He visited the northern king Joram, joined him in battle, and died in the chaos of Jehu's bloody purge in the north. Jehu slaughtered Joram, Ahaziah, and dozens of royal relatives in a divinely ordained judgment against Ahab's house. That's where Athaliah's story explodes. The news reaches Jerusalem. Ahaziah is dead. The son she had guided, manipulated, perhaps groomed as many. In that moment, Athaliah makes a decision that will mark her as one of the darkest figures in biblical history. She doesn't grieve. She doesn't step aside for her grandson, the next rightful heir. She moves to seize absolute power. 2 Kings records it without embellishment. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal offspring. Let that sink in. She ordered the extermination of every remaining male heir of the house of David she could get her hands on. Nephews, grandsons, cousins, anyone with royal blood who could legally claim the throne. This wasn't random slaughter. It was systematic political genocide aimed at erasing David's line and installing herself as sole ruler. Picture the scene inside the palace. Guards loyal to Athaliah stormed the royal quarters. Little princes dragged from their beds. Mothers screaming. Servants trying to hide children behind curtains or in storage rooms. Steel flashes and torchlight. Blood on marble floors. One by one, the royal offspring fall. The house of David, already weakened by previous massacres and raids, is now on the edge of extinction. But Athaliah miscalculates one thing. In the chaos, someone else is moving. Jehosheba, a princess. She's the daughter of King Jera, making her Athaliah's stepdaughter, or half-sister, and the sister of the murdered King Ahaziah. She's also married to Jehoiada, the high priest of Yahweh. That detail matters, because it means one of David's descendants is about to vanish into the last place Athaliah would dare touch: the temple. As soldiers hunt for royal boys to kill, Jehosheba snatches up one tiny child, Joash, Ahaziah's infant son. Let me repeat that. In a palace soaked in blood, one princess risks her life to grab a baby prince and smuggle him out under Athaliah's nose. She takes him, along with his nurse, and hides them in a bedroom, then in the temple of the Lord. While Athaliah believes she has wiped out David's line, the true king of Judah, the last surviving male heir, is growing up in a hidden room inside God's house. Athaliah takes the throne. Think about that. Jerusalem now has a queen, not a queen mother advising from the side, but a ruling monarch sitting where David's son sat. For 6 long years she reigns over Judah, and she rules like the daughter of Jezebel. 2 Chronicles tells us she and her sons broke down parts of the temple and used its sacred furnishings for Baal worship. Baal altars rise in the land David once fought to cleanse. The Queen of Judah is effectively a Baal priestess in royal robes, using the Davidic throne to advance the very evil God had judged in the north. Meanwhile, in the temple, a secret is growing. Jehoiada, the high priest, and Jehosheba are raising Joash. Every day, priests walk past rooms that look empty to outsiders, but inside one, a boy is learning that he is not just any child. He's the rightful king. He's the last ember of God's promise, because God had sworn to David that he would never lack a man to sit on his throne. Athaliah thought she could cut off that promise with a sword. God hid the promise in his house. Year after year, Athaliah's regime seems unshakable. She has the army. She controls the palace. She has turned the people toward Baal. But in the 7th year, Jehoiada decides the time for hiding is over. It's time for a coup, not like Athaliah's bloody purge, but a restoration, a return of the rightful king. Jehoiada, the priest, secretly contacts the commanders of hundreds, the heads of families, the Levites, from all over Judah, and gathers them in the temple courts. He swears them to a covenant in God's house, then reveals the boy. Imagine that moment. Hardened military officers and Levite leaders standing in the temple, and then Jehoiada brings out a 7-year-old child and says, "Behold, the king's son." The shock, the realization, the surge of hope. David's line isn't dead. The promise isn't broken. The rightful heir has been alive and hiding under Athaliah's nose the whole time. Jehoiada lays out a detailed plan. On the day of the coronation, when the guards normally rotate shifts, they will stage an armed ring around the boy. 1/3 of the guards will stand watch at the palace, 1/3 at the Sur gate, and 1/3 at the gate behind the temple. The Levites and soldiers will surround the king with weapons drawn. Anyone who tries to come near will be killed. This is a military operation disguised as a religious ceremony. Finally, the day comes. The temple is packed. Jehoiada brings out Joash, now 7 years old. They place a crown on his head. They give him a copy of the covenant. They anoint him with oil. Trumpets blast. The people clap and shout, "Long live the king!" The sound echoes off the temple walls, spills into the streets, rolls up toward the palace. Athaliah hears the noise, screams, trumpets, the roar of a crowd. She rushes from the palace to the temple, probably with guards at her side, maybe still in royal robes. When she enters the courts, she sees it. A boy standing by the pillar, the place reserved for the king, wearing a crown, surrounded by commanders and trumpeters, with all the people rejoicing and musicians playing. Her reaction is pure panic and rage. She tears her clothes and screams, "Treason! Treason!" That's the chilling irony. The woman who murdered an entire royal family to seize the throne now accuses others of treason when the rightful king appears. Let me repeat that. The real traitor is screaming treason. Jehoiada, gives a cold, calculated order. He commands the officers of the army, "Bring her out between the ranks, and anyone who follows her put to death with the sword." But he adds one condition: "Do not put her to death in the house of the Lord." Even in this violent turning point, the priest guards the holiness of the temple. No royal blood will stain God's courts today. Athaliah is seized. Armed men escort her out through the horse gate by the palace. This is a service entrance, a place for animals, not royalty. There, outside the sacred space, soldiers strike her down with the sword. The last queen of Judah dies in the dust, not in a throne room. The dynasty of Ahab and Jezebel is finally severed from David's line. The woman who tried to kill the promise dies trying to stop its return. Inside the city, the coup continues. Jehoiada leads the king and the people into a covenant. They will be the Lord's people again. Then they march to the temple of Baal, tear it down, smash its altars and images, and kill the priest of Baal in front of the altars. The temple of Yahweh is restored to its rightful use. Joash is escorted to the palace and takes his seat on the throne. Inscription notes, "Quietly. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet after Athaliah had been put to death with a sword." So what do we do with Athaliah's bloody story? What does a queen who murdered her own grandsons to seize power have to do with us? First, Athaliah's story shows how far spiritual compromise can take a nation. Judah didn't collapse overnight. It drifted. Jehoshaphat made a political alliance with Ahab. Joram married Athaliah. Ahaziah followed the ways of Ahab's house. Step by step, the line of David absorbed northern idolatry and politics. By the time Athaliah took power, Baal worship in Jerusalem wasn't a shock. It was the next logical step. When you flirt with compromise long enough, you end up enthroning it. Second, evil often dresses itself in the language of security and stability. Athaliah's purge likely looked, to her supporters, like a necessary move to prevent civil war or competing claims. We need strong leadership. We can't have multiple heirs. This is for the good of the nation. But behind those justifications was raw lust for power. Today, we see the same thing. Leaders justify corruption for stability, for safety, for unity, while sacrificing what's right to keep their grip on power. Third, God's promises are more resilient than human schemes. Athaliah did everything she could to exterminate David's line. Joram had already killed his brothers. Foreign raiders had killed royal sons. Jehu had slaughtered relatives. Athaliah finished the job war, so she thought. But God only needed one child, hidden in one room, protected by one courageous woman and one faithful priest, to keep his covenant alive. Human power can't override divine promises. Fourth, sometimes God preserves his plan through quiet, hidden faithfulness, not loud miracles. There's no fire from heaven in this story. No Red Sea parting. Just a woman risking her life to save a baby, a priest quietly raising him, years of secret planning, and one decisive day at the temple. God was at work the whole time, but through people who were willing to obey in the shadows. Fifth, spiritual leadership matters. While Athaliah reigned, the temple was misused, Baal worship spread, and Judah drifted deeper into darkness. When Jehoiada took action, everything changed. Covenant renewed, idols destroyed, worship restored. Leaders, whether they're pastors, parents, or creators, shape the spiritual direction of people under them. Athaliah used her influence to drag a nation toward Baal. Jehoiada used his to drag it back to God. And finally, Athaliah's story reminds us that evil is loud, violent, and temporary. Her entrance to power was drenched in blood. Her reign twisted worship and truth. Her exit was sudden and brutal. Meanwhile, God's work was quiet, patient, and permanent. The boy she tried to kill sat on the throne. The covenant she tried to erase was renewed. The line she tried to cut off carried on, eventually leading to Jesus, the true son of David, the king she could never reach. Athaliah thought the throne was everything, that killing enough people would secure it. But the throne she stole lasted 7 years. The promise she attacked lasted forever. Next time on Forgotten Scriptures, we're descending even deeper into the darkness of Judah's history to meet a king whose evil made Athaliah look almost restrained. A man who filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, turned the temple into a shrine for every idol he could find, and even burned his own son alive as an offering. And yet, near the end of his life, something happened that shocks everyone who reads it. You won't want to miss the terrifying and unexpected story of King Manasseh. If this story made you think, drop a comment and tell me. Do you think Athaliah believed she was justified? Or did she know exactly what she was doing? And what do you think Jehosheba felt, raising the last heir of David in hiding for 7 years? I want to hear your thoughts. And hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode of the most controversial, violent, and forgotten stories. In the Bible, this is Forgotten Scriptures, where the Bible's darkest stories come to light.